Okay, hi guys. Today's lesson is on section 4.5, which is compound inequalities. I'm going to show you how to write inequalities from words and from graphs. I'm going to show you how to graph them, and I'm going to show you how to solve them and graph them as well. Okay, but first, before we do that, there's two types of compound inequalities. There's the and type and the or type. And hopefully, if I remember, I'm going to try and color code this throughout this lesson. Green will always be and then the red will be for or. Okay, for the and problems, they might write it like this with the word and in between. And you're going to end up combining them into one, but let me show you why. The first thing is if I were to graph this, and I'll erase it after, as a -1 and a 3. X is greater than -1 would be an open circle going to the right. X is less than or equal to +3 is a closed circle going to the left. Okay, but we need to find numbers that are true for both of these. Okay, so if I look at this, is 0 greater than -1? Yes. And is it less than 3? Yes, it is. But if I took a number like 4, is it greater than -1? Yes, it is. But is it less than 3? No, it's not. And so that's why in one of the problems that we did earlier, you cannot go past the two dots. So and problems create like a rainbow, if you can see, and it's the numbers in between it. Okay, so when we write our and from now on, what you do is you put the x in the middle, and you can start this way with the 3, and then you're just going to flip this one over so it becomes -1. So you can see if I looked at it this way, if I did this one, x is still greater than -1, and if I cover this one up, x is less than or equal to 3. But we just wrote it as one combined compound inequality. Okay, and you can only do that for the and problems. When you graph it, it's pretty easy in that you put your 0, you can put a -1 here, put your 3 here, so you can see I'm just dropping these numbers down. This means a closed circle, so I'm going to close circle it because it's or equal to. Because it's just that greater than, I put the circle there, open circle. And in an and problem, because the x is between these two, I just draw a little rainbow. Okay. In word problems, you may see these words, between -1 and 3. If they say inclusive, that's saying inclusive means it's going to be two dots. It includes those two numbers. It's or equal to. Okay. If it says between these two numbers exclusive, that means it doesn't include those dots. So you leave them open. So it's less than signs. The way you would say this is x is -1 and x is less than or equal to 3. Or you can just say, when we say it, I'll show you how to say it as far as shortcutting it. The other type of problem is the or problem. Or problems you cannot combine. If you notice in this, when we went with the less than signs, -1 is less than 3. Okay, if you ever try to, so if I tried to combine this, x is greater than or equal to 3, I would have to go this way, and then less than -1. So if I tried to combine it like that, you can see how I flip-flopped them. But if I look at it, 3 and I have less than signs is not less than -1. So that you cannot combine the or problems. You have to just leave it as it is, and that is going to be your simplified form. So you just from there, the way you graph it, put the 0, put the -1, put the 3, okay, and you graph them individually. So x is less than -1 is an open circle going to the left. X is greater than or equal to 3 is a closed circle going to the right. Okay, and if you notice the two type of problems, I have the same open circle on -1 and the same closed circle on 3, but on an and problem it's in between, and the or problem it goes outwards. Okay, so if you want to think of that way, or goes out. Okay, and it goes just simply outwards like that. So that's the difference between and ors. Okay, now if we start writing inequalities from words, so over here I have it, writing an and inequality on this side and writing an or inequality on this side. Okay, and I say write the inequality and then graph it. Okay, so for this one, all numbers at least -3. So right away, if it's an or, I can write at least, which is greater than or equal to -3. So there's my at least -3. At most 4, which means it has to be less than or equal to 4. You can see how I wrote them two separate ones, but I combined it into one. So here's my x is at least -3, and then here is my x is at most 4. So again, you need to know at least means greater than or equal to. At most meant less than or equal to. Okay, and I just write it as one compound inequality. And when I graph it, again, I just put the 0 there, the -3 here, the 4 here. I can see both of them are going to be closed circles. And again, I know and problems are a rainbow in between. You can see the x is between these two. If I said it in words, I would say x is between -3 and 4. And I would say, because it's closed out, I would say inclusive. Okay? Because it includes these two numbers. Okay? For the OR problem here, all numbers less than -1. So s is less than -1. And you always have to write the word or, by the way. If you want to circle it to help you, that's fine. And then x is no less than 3. X is no less than 3. Would it include 3? Yes, it would. Okay, no less than 3. Okay, so when I graph it, I can put my 0 here, put my -1 here, put my 3 here. Less than -1 is an open circle to the left. X is greater than or equal to 3. There's a closed circle going to the right. And again, or goes out. Okay? So the or problems, you just read it separately. X is less than -1 or x is greater than or equal to 3. Okay? That's how you do those, writing them from words. You just have to, again, be aware of what these words mean as far as inequalities. Okay, and that's why I underlined them. Okay, so the next part is going to be writing inequalities from graphs and then graphing the inequalities. So going back and forth. And you can see I have the homework check on the bottom. So the first one is writing inequalities from graph. I can see that because it's in between, it's going to be an and problem. So it's pretty easy. The and problems are pretty easy. You just go -2. And I can see it's a closed circle, so it's going to be less than or equal to x. Open circle is less than 5. Okay, pretty simple. If this is a closed circle, I just make it or equal to. So again, when I do that, all I do is put the x in the middle, drop down these two numbers, and if it's a closed dot, make it less than or equal to, open dot, less than, and you are done. Okay. For this one, I can see it's going to be an or problem. And oh no, I should have used green for my and problem. So I'll do it real quick again. So put the x in the middle, -2, less than or equal to, less than 5. Okay. On this one, it's an or problem, so I'm going to use red. I write two separate ones. X is less than or equal to -5, or x is greater than 4, and since it's an open circle. And that's all you do. Okay. So that's how you write compound inequalities according to the graphs, if they give you the graph. Homework check number 1, please write this compound inequality. Okay. So again, I'll put it nice and clear for you. Homework check number 1, please write this compound inequality. Okay. The next one is going to be graphing. So you graph the inequality, the compound inequality, if they give it to you. Okay. So on this one, you can see it's and. So I'm just going to put a 0 here, I'm going to put a 1 here, and I'm going to put a -4 here. Okay. Because this is a less than, or I'm sorry, greater than sign, I put an open circle. Because this is a less than or equal to, I put a closed circle, and I just do that. So you can see my numbers are right underneath it, and I know it's in between. Okay. For the or problem, I'm going to look at this, but because I have a 1 and a 7, I'm going to put my 0 here, put my 1 here, and put my 7 here. So be careful on where they give it to you. I've been giving you all one negative and one positive, but I wanted to show you this one. So in this case, x is less than or equal to 1, closed circle on 1, going out. X is greater than 7, open circle, going out. Okay. Pretty simple as far as those go. So graphing the inequalities. Okay, I wanted to come to this one, so I'm going to come here. So on this one, solving and or compound inequalities. Okay, so I have a couple different styles, problems for you. So this first one, when they give it, the book shows that you can split it and solve it separately and then bring it back together. I'm going to show you a shortcut that I think saves time and energy and is hopefully easier. It's basically like having two lines. Okay? So same like the inequalities or equations. But whatever you do to one, instead of doing to the other side, you have to do to all three. So if I'm going to plus 5 here, I need to plus 5 here, and I need to plus 5 here. Okay, that gets rid of this one, and I'm left with 1 less than r less than or equal to 6. Okay, so you can see how I solved it. So whenever I do to one, I do to all three. Okay, and you can, if you want to erase these, you can erase these. And when I graph it really quick, I'm just going to do it real fast. I put a 1 here, I put a 6 here. My 0 is way over here. Open circle, close circle, line in between. Okay, here's a little trickier one. If I minus 1 from all three of these, okay, to get rid of this, now I have 6 less than negative 3 and less than or equal to 12. When I divide by negative 3 here, and this is key, you need to flip the sign. Again, when you multiply or divide by negative with inequalities, you need to flip the signs. So this becomes a greater than, and this becomes a greater than or equal to. Okay, this just becomes the n in the middle. When I do this, this becomes a negative 2. And when I do this, it becomes a negative 4. You cannot leave the n problems with greater thans. You have to flip the whole thing around. And by the way, you can see that negative 2 is greater than negative 4. So when you flip it around, you put the negative 4 here. Take the or equal to with it. Okay, so I took both of them with it. The n goes here, and then the less than negative 2. Okay, so again, when I divided by the negative 3, I flipped the sign. And you can see it. And then at the end, I had to reflip it again so I have less than signs. Because when you combine an and problem, you have to use less than signs. And if I double check again, negative 4 is less than negative 2. Okay, I'm going to come this way just for a quick graph. All I do is put this, negative 4 goes here, negative 2 goes here, put my 0. It's open circle here, closed circle here, and a line in between. Okay, so pretty simple as far as graphing once you get used to it. Okay, so going back to these, I'm going to leave that up so you can kind of see it. Solving OR problems. You cannot do it this way because you cannot combine it. So you just solve them separately. So the OR problems, when I solve it, just minus 4, 3x is less than negative 6, divide by 3, x is less than negative 2. Leave your OR, okay? You have to leave the OR. So I plus 1 to both sides, and I get 2x is greater than or equal to 6, divide by 2, and x is greater than or equal to 3. You have to put the word OR in your answer. You cannot leave it out. Okay, so drop it down, circle it if you want to, remind yourself, and that's a common mistake people do. They forget to put OR in the answer, they just leave these two. Okay, when you graph it, put the 0 here, the negative 2, the positive 3. I can see that's going to be a closed circle going out. This is going to be an open circle going left. Okay. So here's another one. If you notice, by the way, this is less than, greater than. The ORs will always be less than, greater than. This might throw you off because I have two less thans. But if you notice, there is a negative 3x here, so we know we're going to flip the sign. Okay. So when I minus 3, x is less than negative 4, I'm going to drop down my OR. When I minus 1 from both sides, I got negative 3x less than negative 9. Divide by negative 3. Once I divide by negative 3, I need to flip the sign. So it becomes greater than positive 3. So when I write it, I'm going to write it this way. Okay. And if you notice, I forgot to write the OR. So that would be considered wrong, okay, or half wrong. You got to write the OR. Okay. Quick graph. Put my negative 4 here. Put my 0. Put my 3. I can see they're going to be open circles and going out. Okay. Again, once you start doing this more, you can start getting it down pat. As far as graphing, it should be pretty simple. Okay, I do have one more example I want to give you before the homework check. What if I have something like this? What kind of problem is that? Is that an and or an or? Okay, you're right, it is an and problem, and so I can do it this way. I can multiply all of these by 4 to get rid of this denominator. Okay, so 4 times 1/2 becomes 2, less than 3x minus 1 less than 20. Okay. Plus 1 to all of them, and I get 3 less than 3x less than 21. Divide by 3 to get rid of this. And I got rid of that. So it becomes 1 less than x less than 7. Okay, another way of saying it, x is between 1 and 7 exclusive because it's open circles. When I graph it, put the 0, put the 1, put the 7, open circles, and if it's an and, it's between. Okay, hopefully this helps you guys. I do have a homework check here. It's one that we've had already, or I just did. Okay, I want you to solve and graph. So solve this and then graph it. Okay, so solve it, graph it. Negative 20 less than 3x plus 2 less than 1. Please solve it, graph it. Please do the homework checks tonight before you come to class. They're due before you come to class, so I'll check the grades to see if you have a grade. But I do, again, want to see the work and the graph. And please watch the video before you do this, okay? Thank you, and I hope you guys have a good day or good evening. This video is 16 minutes and 37 seconds.